Okay, Randy, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, the Naked Mindset podcast. I very rarely have guests, but you're somebody I have incredible respect for and known you for a long time. And you're a coach of mine, and you're somebody who's just got incredible success. So I want to say a huge thank you for taking time out of your day to be part of this podcast. And want to talk about your new book, Radical Rebirth.
Well, I'm trapped because of the pandemic, but I'm wishing I was in Sydney right now. So I'm living vicariously through you.
Yeah, we go and have a spaghettini. That's what we would do.
Yes. I miss my spaghettini with chili more than you could ever know.
Oh, I'm sure you'll come down when we're back on. Look, I've got some questions I want to ask you about the book. But I suppose there are two beginning questions that are not about the book. And the first one is more of a very general question. A lot of my listeners like to know what success people do during the day. Like, do you go to the toilet? Do you drink water? What do you do? What's a day in the life of Randy Gage actually like? Is it as exciting as we think?
Well, on Mondays, I usually rewire my stereo wires. On Tuesday, I soak my comb. On Thursday, actually, I have a perfect day for me is what I try to do every day, which means, but I don't land it every day. But my perfect, the routine or the outcome I'm looking for, I want to get up before the sun does. I want to get my cardio done, drink my protein shake, check my messages. I do a lot of international business. So, you're going to bed when I'm waking up. So if it's something from Australia, it's waiting in my inbox. I don't fall victim to my inbox because that's a horrible way to start the day. But I do check it, and I check my Signal or WhatsApp. And just, was there something? Yeah, I've got clients in Europe and it's already 4 PM there or 3 PM, and they might need an answer on something because we're scheduling a photo shoot for a catalog I'm designing for them or a website or something. So I look for that stuff. Just make sure there's no fires burning, because I do have the productivity habit of, I read an email once. So when I read it, that's the time to respond to it or delete it or whatever has to happen. I don't like, okay, I have to do that later. Okay. So I'm really just looking through subject lines, where they're from, who they're from, and, is it 5 exclamation points, urgent, emergency, as soon as you wake up,
Yeah.
And then I want to be, I'm going to do mostly my self-development during cardio. So I'm probably on the bicycle, stationary bike, or the elliptical, and I'm listening to podcasts. And then I want to be writing, and I'm going to write all morning, hopefully. When I do need a break, I do believe in this circadian rhythms that if you're, when I'm really writing for 50 minutes or so, okay, get up, fix another green tea, eat a banana. Then I might respond to an email I noticed earlier that is something that, because if that's a kind of a mental break from the writing. And then back. And then usually the afternoons are, I'll have lunch. I'll do some returning calls, returning emails. Then I'll do a resistance training workout. And then I'll try to still do some more creative stuff. I want to finish by 6 or 7 PM. And then hopefully that I could be like real people and go on a date or meet someone for dinner or watch a movie or whatever the case may be. But I like to work 10, 12 hours with the lunch breaks and the exercise breaks in there. And that's my route. That's my perfect routine.
Yeah, you've got quite a productive day though, right? Like you're not fluffing around. Like do you use a planner or something like that, or do you use it just your routine is your routine? Do you use a system to plan out your days, or is it just that's what it is?
When I have a lot of balls I'm juggling, which is frequently because I like to paint myself in a corner. That's how I'm so productive. I say, yes, I'll write the copy for this website and you'll have it by Tuesday. And I'm going to create a catalog concept for you and you'll have that on Thursday. And I do need to be productive. And when I have too many balls, then I do,
Yeah.
I got a chiropractic appointment, write a blog, new TOC for my new book. I got to do slides for the client in Turkey. I've got to schedule a photo shoot for the other European deal. And then a follow-up email to Mamie Brown's little baby boy, Leslie Calvin Brown, about something that he wants me to do for him. So that's my actual to-do list for today.
Got it.
And of course, your podcast was on the list as well.
Yeah. So in your book, you make a reference that you're an atheist. Now, are you saying that when did that actually happen for you? Because obviously you have a background of being part of the Unity Church, right? So you were part of Unity, you were there for a long time. When you say atheist, do you define it as is it a God religion that is the issue, or is it a spiritual connection that's the issue? What do you define as atheism for you?
Well, remember, I'm a writer, so words mean everything to me.
Yeah.
So I would say I'm an atheist, and I would say you're an atheist. Did you know that you're an atheist?
I didn't know that, no.
You don't believe you're an atheist?
Not in the context of a spiritual connective source, because that's my definition of atheism, I suppose, is not believing in that.
Let's test that premise.
Right.
Do you believe Mercury is God?
No.
Do you believe Zeus is God?
No.
Do you believe Buddha is God?
No.
Shiva, the destroyer, the death shatterer of worlds?
No.
Okay, so what we've established is we're both atheists, but I might be an atheist for one extra God than you do.
I think that's a great example of questioning the premise.
Yeah, and I don't really, and I'm not one of these militant atheists. People think I should be, right? I get letters all the time. You got to replace, Christopher Hitchens. It was the kind of the four horsemen. You had Hitchens, Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, Michael Shermer, Sam Harris, I think. And so Christopher, who was one of the most brilliant people has ever walked the planet, is no longer with us. And so people are like, you have to take his place. And I'm like, I have no desire to be a militant atheist. I'm actually a fundamentalist agnostic. Meaning I don't, I really am agnostic. I don't know. I can't prove you can never prove a negative. So if you tell me there's little green men on Mars, I cannot prove that there are not little green men on Mars. Because I would show you all the evidence and you say, yeah, but your cameras didn't catch them, or you didn't realize they're invisible, or they were hiding behind the mountain.
Yes.
I can't prove it, right? So I can't prove there's no Jesus, Mohammed, Buddha, Hindu, Krishna, anybody. I do, but I'm agnostic about it. So I love that there are people who get power from their faith. And I have no problem with that. As you could see in the book, my problem is the dogma and the doctrines of organized religion and the insidious, often evil beliefs that they program people with.
So what is we talk a lot in the book, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through it, and you talk about limiting beliefs. You talk about the foundational beliefs that we grow up with. What would you say is your foundational belief now that underpins who you are as a person, that keeps you on track? What is it you fundamentally believe?
I fundamentally believe that what makes a prosperous life for me, is staying on the path to enlightenment.
Right.
And I don't say enlightenment like the in a social signaling kind of way. I mean, I've got to be on a path that I'm getting closer to the highest possible version of myself.
Mm.
And when I'm on that path, I'm productive, I'm healthy, I'm happy, I have mad genius creativity,
Yep.
and I'm doing work that just lights me up. And
Yep.
I'm eager to throw the sheets off the bed in the morning and jump into my day. And it took me, it's such a cliche to say it's a journey, not the destination. But there's a really good reason why that is a cliche, because it took me decades to find that out.
Mm.
Because I'm this analytical person, and I'm like, okay, where I want to get to this point. And when I reach that point, that means I'm a success. So I want to be in the Speaker Hall of Fame. Okay, I made it. I want to write a New York Times bestseller. I made it. I
Mm.
want to be a millionaire. Okay, I made it. But every time I would get to one of those, what I thought was the destination, I realized, well, that's just the second stop on the subway. And
Mm.
there's a whole bunch of stops after this one. And it took me a really long time for all the work I've done in personal growth and self-development. Took me a shocking, astounding length of time to get to that realization. But
Yes.
I think I finally made it to that awareness.
Yeah. What triggered you to write this book? I mean, you've written so many books on prosperity, and you've taught about prosperity for a while. What got underneath your skin that you thought the world needs this book? And it's an amazing book. Like I said, I'm about 3/4 of the way through it. I think by far this is your best written work. I love the way it's written. The prose just flows off the page. It sings. I think it carries the concept so brilliantly. But why did you write it? Like, what was the trigger for you?
It was my responsibility to the universe,
Mm.
because um, while I don't necessarily believe in some of the batshit crazy things that organized religion might teach, I do believe there is a power that we all are part of, a spiritual awakening, a force greater than ourselves. And maybe it's nature, maybe it's natural evolution. But I do believe that I've been really blessed to be in the flow of that process. And the story that never made it in the book, and I don't know why it never made it in the book. It wasn't that I kept it out of the book. I just never occurred to me to put it in the book, because it was just kind of one of these foundational assumptions you begin with. But if you watch the very first prosperity live stream that I did the first week of January
Mhm.
2021 here, I started this new weekly prosperity ministry. It's a for-profit ministry. It's an unchurch.
Yes.
Um,
And it's an
uh,
amazing program. I know there's several people from down under that are listening to that and watching that. So it's really great.
well, so the very first one, I told a story of being in the crappy room with the crappy view of the airport Marriott in Miami, where I was ready to blow my brains out,
Mm.
and writing my suicide journal entry to myself. And I was blessed that I was working with a therapist, and it was Christmas Eve, by the way, just to keep the dramatic, romantic aspect of it, right? So here it is, Christmas Eve, and I'm there because I've just got out of my 11th negative dysfunctional relationship in a row. I've moved out of the house. I've got all these frequent flyer points and hotel points, so I just check myself into the Marriott here in Miami. Um, I didn't have the foresight to say, well, what's the best Marriott in Miami? What about, one with a good view? And, no, I was at the airport one because I lived in airports in those days. And so I got professional help and didn't kill myself. And what this book was kind of the catharsis of recognizing for everybody out there, you don't have to kill yourself when your life is miserable. You don't have to kill yourself when you hate yourself. And that's where I was at. I hated myself. I had a lot of money. I was very successful. Everybody from the outside, if I would have done that, if I would have gone through with that, everybody would say, he had everything. Why would he kill himself? No, I didn't have everything. I had no mental harmony. I had no spiritual peace. I had no healthy relationships. I didn't have my health even. Had a lot of money, and I was semi-famous in my area, in my space. But the book is kind of the recognition that you don't have to kill yourself. You can kill off the parts of yourself that you don't like, or in my case, that you hate. And you really can give yourself a rebirth. You can give yourself a fresh start. And that's really that was the catalyst in answer to your question. It was just that it took me all these years to kind of put it together and articulate it and get that formula that because my friends would joke, well, Randy's on his 4th midlife crisis. Let's hope he, figures it out this time.
Yeah.
And it took me writing the book, because of course, yourself, you write books for yourself. You write what you need to learn.
Absolutely.
So what I had to learn was that, no, don't beat yourself up because you're 50 years old and you just figured out you want to change your whole life. Don't beat yourself up and be negative because you're 60 years old and you want to recreate or reinvent your life. Celebrate that. And some of the people listening to this are of the age they could live to be 200. It's possible some people watching this are of the age that they will live forever, that they will be able to trade into a new body, or they will be able to download their consciousness into a microchip of some sort or manner. Okay, you wanted to be a dentist when you were 24 and you got out of college and you did that. But maybe when you're 45, you want to be a sculptor or a dancer, or maybe you want to join the army, or maybe you want to run away with the circus. That's great, because that's that evolutionary process of moving another step closer to the highest possible version of yourself. And for the people who read it so far, the feedback I get, it's so liberating for them, because we're our own worst critics. I'm my own worst critic. I beat the hell out of myself. Most people I know do the same thing. And I had been beating the hell out of myself because I kept, it was really the first, and I did rebirths before I knew they were rebirths, right? When you're sitting in a jail cell for armed robbery and burglary at 15 years old, you kind of figure out, this life plan I have isn't working very well. I might need to change up some things here.
Yeah.
And so I had experiences like that, getting diagnosed HIV positive in 2006. And seems crazy looking back on it today, but let me tell you, in 2006, when your doctor said, I'm afraid I don't have good news, you made your will. You started, do I need to put my condo up for sale? What kind of arrangements do I need to make? Because people were dying a lot. Yeah. And now that's not a death sentence. That's a treatable disease like measles or mumps, right? Yeah. But 2006, it wasn't. So and I'm sure there's people watching, whether it was that diagnosis or cancer or leukemia, losing a loved one. you get the opportunity to say, well, wait a minute, let me just reevaluate the premise of my life. Talk about questioning premises. Maybe I want to question the premise of my entire existence. Because how many people are doctors because their parents were doctors and their grandparents were, and their great grandparents were. We have 11 generations of our family have served in the military.
Just following the path into uni,
Yeah.
because somebody else said that that's what they should be doing.
Yeah, and it would never, for most people, until they read that book or some kind of wake-up call like that, it would never occur to them to say, well, do I really want to be a dentist, or am I just being a dentist because my father and my grandfather were?
I love you made this statement, which I really love. You said your need to protect your identity conflicts with your ability for logical, rational thought. You made that statement in the book, early in the book, and I think that's such a profound statement. Why do you think that's so important?
I call it a volunteer lobotomy. And I say, every time you attach a label to yourself, you are lowering your IQ, essentially. Even though you have not actually lowered your IQ, you have put a firewall around part of your brain that you can no longer access.
Right.
So if you look here in the United States, and I see a similar dynamic happening where you are down under, I see a similar dynamic happening in Europe and the UK. Yesterday was President's Day. I posted a picture on my Facebook page with myself and President Obama, where a luncheon I got to have with him, and got the official photographer with the seal, president, about the date and everything. Yes. So I put that on my Facebook page, happy President's Day, Barack Obama, and tagged him, thanks for your service to America.
Yes.
And I knew what was going to happen, but, I didn't care, but I thought this would be intriguing to see. And right away, I've lost all respect for you. There was now, and many just really fun, supportive, great messages. There's 4 or 5 people were just so viscerally blinded by the label that they have assigned themselves,
right,
that they can't even look at a picture of somebody on President's Day. And like, what gave me the idea is I forget, somebody I followed on Twitter tweeted out, hey, on President's Day, here's 2 of my favorites. And it was a picture of them with both Bushes, Senior and W. And I thought, what a cool thing to do on President's Day. I'm going to do that. And I'm sure, I don't even have to read the comments to know they had to get the woke liberals who were just eviscerating for that, because they've attached a label to themselves. And I have so many Trump loving friends and so many Trump hating friends and so many Hillary loving friends and Hillary hating friends. And they're not capable of rational thought. They just cannot. If Donald Trump, who, let's be real, personally, I think his behavior is despicable. And I think it's the result of, he's people who are hurt others. Yes. Right. He comes from a really messed up father who gave him conditional love. He's repeated the process. If you look at the cycle with his kids, total conditional love, and you see the result. And by the way, I'll put it on the other side. Hillary, who I adore, who is not the woman she is portrayed in the media, having met her, having spoken with her, knowing who she is, she's a one, and she would kill me for saying this, but Hillary is an abused woman. I feel what Bill put her through with all those affairs and all that public scorn that was heaped upon her because of and she did what all victims of abuse do. She protected her abuser, right? So I see that stuff. I see the human inside, but most people can't. So here I am. I just really feel like, oh God, this Donald Trump guy. You know? But I also recognize that if he stopped and rescued a kitten on the road that was going to get run over from a truck, people would attack him for that and attribute the worst. Why? Because they've attached a label that they are a proud Democrat or they are a proud liberal, and anything Donald Trump does is evil. And the same way with the other side. And like I say, the political party labels are different down in Oz and in the UK and Germany, but it's the same dynamic. There is a tribalism, which is the tribalism is the ultimate manifestation of attaching labels to yourself. So even when it's a good thing, when you say, I'm an environmentalist, or I'm a peace supporter, or I'm opposed to any label you give yourself, you're going to feel the need to defend that identity.
Yes.
And as soon as you do, the confirmation bias has set in, and you cannot be rational.
That's interesting. That's interesting because people will defend their identity to their death, and so many people do, and we've seen that through human history. Let me ask you about goals, because you make a statement in the book that people should set goals that are bold, daring, and imaginative. And I've heard you say they should almost be audacious. How do you reconcile some people who are aiming for these non-realistic goals? Because you say don't set a realistic goal. If they're setting these big, bold, imaginative, audacious goals, what about the people that run into self-doubt because they are so big? Do you think that that's just part of the process, that when you're setting big goals, self-doubt's going to show up and you need to go through it?
Well, to me, the secret sauce in goal setting is compelling enough to create internal motivation, but not so imaginative or audacious that you lose belief in your ability to attain them.
Right.
I'm in the penthouse here. If I say, I believe I can fly, and jump out the window, I'm gonna splat down on the ground. I can read all the positive mental attitude books. I can visualize myself as a bird. I can, do all of the positive thinking. Gravity is still going to remain undefeated. So, but if I set a goal that I could build a squirrel suit that would allow me to jump off the balcony and make it over this little bit of land here, I'm on an island between Miami and Miami Beach, and that I could, build one of those squirrel suits with the wings that come out, and I could glide from my balcony, because I'm high up, over and make a soft landing in Biscayne Bay. That's a doable goal. And if I really wanted to do that, which I have absolutely no desire to do, since I have fear of heights and I don't know how to swim. But if I actually wanted to do that, right, and was motivated by that's a good goal. But if you work in Asia in a sweatshop and you make 10 cents a day, and you set a goal that, oh man, for next year, I want to make 12 cents a day. I don't think that's really going to motivate you in a big way to do some change in your life to make that happen. And by the same token, if you say, okay, my goal is next year, I'm going to make $1,000 a day. If you're at 10 cents, I don't think your subconscious mind is going to believe it. And that's the only audience for that speech. Okay. We're selling to our subconscious mind, right? That's what we got to do with a goal. We got to make a sale to the subconscious mind. I need to tweet that out. That's what goal setting is, making a sale to your subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe it's possible, if you're making 10 cents, you really aren't going to believe that you're going to make 1,000 a day next year, most likely. So you're, again, not going to make a behavioral change, because it isn't the goal we set that transforms our life. It's the behavioral change we make based on whether or not the goal motivates us.
Yes.
So if the goal is compelling enough to motivate us, and at least believable, even if it's on the, and I do like to err on the outer limits of the reach, right? The outer limits of the believability, because for me, the fact that I had lunch with the president of the United States of America, coming as the middle child of a single mother who raised 3 kids, and I shared a room with my brother. My sister shared a room with my mother, and the 4 of us shared one bathroom on Allied Drive in Madison, Wisconsin. And I was in jail at 15 years old, and I'm not never, don't have a college degree or any connections, and didn't know wealthy people. The fact that I could achieve some of these things in my life, that's crazy. But I was able to achieve them because it's like, here's a good analogy for this. I think your goal has to be in the range of your headlights when you're driving at night, right? So the headlight may give us, depending where we are and how much other light there is, and is it foggy or clear, and is it sunny, or is the moon out, or too many stars, or whatever. But we believe we can get to what we can see in the headlights, at least. Once we get beyond the headlights, maybe now we lose some of the belief that we could do it. So if you would ask me when I was 15, sitting in a jail cell, are you going to grow up and have lunch with the president one day? I would say, I don't know what you're smoking, but that's some good shit. Can I get some of that?
Yeah.
But as my life evolved and the headlights kept getting deeper and deeper, and I accomplished now what I believed was capable to happen in my life, was believable enough that I could excel further.
Yeah, look, I like the concept of the radical rebirth. Also, your beliefs change, your identity changes, who you are changes. You are a new person. You can go for new goals, and of course, if you maintain a victim mindset, you can even use a radical rebirth as a way to stay a victim. You made this really amazing statement, which really hit me really hard. And it said, when the victim is ready, the crisis will appear, which I just think is just priceless. Can you talk a little bit to that point? Because I think it's so important.
Yeah, that's one of the quotes I tweet out from the book or put with the book cover, and it blows people's mind, just blows their mind. Because of course it's such an obvious play on, when the teacher is ready.
Yes.
And when they hear it, it's like ding, 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 ding. They were like, holy shit, how did he figure that out? Well, I figured that out because I was a professional victim for the first 30 years of my life, right? So in my case, I recognize, wow, for me, it was coming to the realization that I was living in all this drama and trauma and all those negative dysfunctional relationships in a row and all those health challenges because I was getting an emotional payoff from being victimized. That was, my self-esteem was so low that I wanted to be a victim because it made me feel worthy. It made me feel like the reason my life wasn't working wasn't my fault. It's because I was an innocent victim.
Yes.
And so it just kind of came to me as I was writing the book, when the victim is ready, because I would unknowingly, this is all done, as you know yourself with the work you're doing. It's all done on a subconscious level. You have no conscious awareness you're doing it.
Mm.
But one of the other things in the book that really kind of gets people up in their grill is, I say, there are random events, but there are random circumstances, right? But there are no random lives.
Mm.
I get if a sinkhole opens up and you're just under your driveway and swallows up your Lexus, you had nothing to do with that. Okay. But if you move to 6 houses in a row and there's a sinkhole at each one of those 6 houses that swallows up your car, we can definitively say, okay, you are creating that reality. You are finding the crisis that you can gravitate to. You can find the cloud in every silver lining, and you've demonstrated that.
I love how you turn those statements around. That's just absolutely priceless. Um, okay, so let me ask you 2 questions that were suggested I ask you. Um, Now, you talk about a re-engineering in the book about how to go from how to have a radical rebirth and go through the process of having that. So, what are some of the challenges you could expect in the initial stages of this re-engineering that you talk about?
Your insanity is going to try and recreate itself,
Okay.
because that's what insanity does. And all of these mental things, like if we talked about Trump, he is a malignant narcissist. That's always going to reinvent itself, right? And even most people, you say you have to get professional help. According to psychologists, there actually is no cure for malignant narcissism, right? According to psychologists, there actually is no cure for sociopaths, right? Other than lobotomy type things, or
Mm.
just so drugged under awareness that victim situations like Hillary that I mentioned, or people who are victims of abuse, children of alcoholics, right? These create such legacies, such personality twists that that it you hang on to. And being I was an addict. I was a teenage alcoholic. I was a teenage drug addict. I fought addiction issues my whole life. I became addicted to crystal meth when I was like 50, after being clean and sober for 30 years.
Mm.
Just reinvented my insanity and told myself, okay, you could be a recreational drug user.
Yeah.
You're smart enough now. You've figured enough things out. You're successful. You have a money. You're not one of those homeless crack addicts. You're not one of those crazed meth heads with the bad teeth and lose their job and their house and everything. You're such a smart guy. You can figure this out.
Mm. Mm.
But that's just my insanity reinventing itself, right? And that's why the children of alcoholics have such a high propensity to be alcoholics, and drug addicts, same thing. Why people who were abused have such a high propensity to grow up to be abusers. Why addicts keep falling into relapse, because like, again, I mentioned the emotional payoff we get from victimhood. Well, if you're not getting that emotional payoff and you haven't replaced it with something healthy, you're going to find a way to become a victim again, because you need that emotional payoff. That, in my case, and actually, it's not in this book, it's in my DEFCON 1 book, which is really a specialized book just for people in direct selling. But I tell the story of this couple, Spencer and Shivani Pak, who were idols of mine in the business I was working in. And they invited me to come to their city and train their team. And they were taking me out for dinner the night before. And I was just regaling them with all of the drama and trauma in my life and how this happened and that happened and everything. And, you know, because that's what I did. I was a professional victim.
Yep.
And whenever I had a chance to tell people all of the horrific things that happened to me that I was persevering through, that was the way I was trying to tell myself I was worthy. That was the self-esteem I didn't possess that I desperately was seeking. And so we finished the dinner, and Spence and Shivani had this gorgeous red Mercedes convertible, and we were in the parking lot afterward, and Shivani was in the back, and Spence was opening his door, and I was, you know, about getting in on the passenger side, and he looked over across the car and he said, "Randy, have you given any thought to what you might be doing to manifest all of this stuff?" And I was like, I mean, I was grinding my molars. How could this cold-hearted son of a bitch, was he not listening to everything I just told him? Didn't I just give him chapter and verse of all of the mean, evil, twisted things that the cruel world had subjected this poor innocent victim to, and he didn't pay attention? And you know, I was grinding my molars for like 3 weeks after that, just processing what he said. But I will be arrogant enough to give myself credit and say, yeah, I did recognize, excuse me,
Right.
you know, it took me 3 weeks, but I did recognize, yeah, I was contributing to that. But it took 3 weeks of pretty anger against Spence and self-reflection to be aware of that.
I think that self-awareness, and you talk about the awareness bit in the book, is very, very important. Two more quick questions for you. In the process, as people are going through this re-engineering, what are some of the signs or signals that they're actually on the right track? Because, yeah, okay, the insanity is going to reinvent itself. That'll tell you that you're off track. What are the signs and signals that you're actually on track?
You need to be referencing the source material frequently,
Right.
Meaning checking back the book, following my blog. Like say you're doing your rebirth, following my process that I'm outlining in the book, checking back with my blog, listening to my podcast, because I will be calling you out all the time, because that's what I do in my work. That's what my job is. You know, I feel like if somebody doesn't unfriend me or unfollow me every day, I'm really not doing my job. I'm probably being one of those, saccharine, sugary, motivational speakers who just tells people what they want to believe.
Right.
And that's not my assignment on this planet. My assignment is to get in your grill. Otherwise, well, we don't need more motivational pablum. We don't need more, I did it and you can do it too. You're a beautiful, unique snowflake and there's nobody like you and just be you. We got enough of that.
Yeah.
We need somebody who says, really, that's the story you're selling yourself, that you're just having 4 drinks to relax with dinner? That, you're really just 6 glasses of wine because it helps you be uninhibited? You're really buying that story? You haven't realized you're an alcoholic? That's the stuff you're going to read in my blog. That's right. So that's the source material. But then I think we all have to find people that we can trust to call us on our stuff.
Yes.
People, and there's lots of people who will call us on our stuff. There's 89 people who follow you on Facebook are happy to call you on your stuff every day, but they don't care about you. They're calling you on your stuff because they hate you or they're envious of you or they hate themselves and they need to try and tear you down. You need people who love you and care about you and want the highest good for you. And that will say, hey, I don't think this is really serving you. Or, hey, I know you're excited about this new relationship, but have you noticed all the parallels of this relationship and the last three dysfunctional ones you have? I love you, and I'm worried that you're repeating the same negative pattern.
Mm.
You need people who can do that, not because they want to catch you or get you, but because they care about you.
Yes.
So if you can find one person or two people in your life who you can entrust with that sacred honor, and you get the opportunity, the sacred honor to do that for one or two other people, that's one of the greatest gifts of humanity. And that's, we're looking for guardrails. We're looking for, again, because our insanity is always going to recreate itself. And I get everybody listening is not a sociopath and they're not a malignant narcissist, but addiction, alcoholism, really social anxiety, really low self-esteem, repeating negative relationships, repeating abusive relationships. These are all they're forms of insanity.
Mm.
And maybe I shouldn't use the word insanity, because then people are gonna, maybe that's too charged a word, because they think they need to be locked in a mental institution.
I think it's contextualized. I think you've contextualized it well, though.
Okay, I hope everyone listening, watching really gets that. I'm not saying, okay, you're running around with a butterfly net and we're going to lock you up with a straitjacket, but recognize that those things are graduated forms of insanity that we're all, there's research in the book. I'm talking about the core foundational beliefs that you get in 7 main areas.
Mm-hmm.
Health and wellness, God and religion, sex and sexuality, money and work, relationships and marriage, right? So there's 7 big buckets. And I'm saying your core foundational beliefs in all of those, for most people, are created before you're 8 or 9 years old. If your parents are bickering all the time and one is abusive or one cheats on the other, your core foundational belief about marriage and relationships is probably set when you're 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
Right? If everybody in your family is overweight, everybody takes 15 prescriptions, everybody eats nothing but Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, junk food, candy, cake, cookies, Twinkies, your core foundational belief about health and wellness is set before you're 8 years old.
Yeah.
Right. So there's research, and I mean strong, compelling research, that says a lot of the default personality traits are set in 60 days from birth.
Mm.
If you're a premature birth, if the cesarean goes really sideways and and so you've got nurses and doctors talking angrily and frantically and is panicking and trying to save your life as a baby. You don't even know what those words mean, but you feel the tension, the anxiety. You're experiencing physical discomfort because the birth isn't going right. If you had to be in a NICU unit, the neonatal ICU,
Yeah.
and like they've learned now today, they actually ask volunteers to go to NICU units and just touch the babies and be there, reach through with the plastic gloves and just hold the hand of the baby, or put your hand on their chest, just so they feel the connection of another human, which is normal when you're first born. Well, there's a lot of research that shows, like, if that happens, if you're in one of those traumatic births, or you're abandoned at birth, or you're an orphan who's abandoned on, go to Mumbai, go to Rio de Janeiro. There are orphans. There are 4-year-old, 5-year-old kids, orphans, abandoned on the street. Their core vision, their philosophy, their beliefs about life, they're set at 4 years old. And until and unless we can get them to a point where we can bring them to the surface and recognize, my money is, I'm a high school dropout, right? I'm not a psychologist, but I will say the greatest, most brilliant thing Freud ever said was, and I'm paraphrasing, this is not the exact thing, but basically he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, you're going to attribute it to fate or luck or destiny. But the truth is, if you're an abandoned child, or you were an orphan, or you were put up for adoption and you went through 16 different foster homes in your childhood, of course you're going to blow up your marriage the first time you get married if you never recognize that, wow, I had this conditional love withheld from me all through my childhood. I built this brick wall, this force field around me to protect myself from getting hurt. So I will never let anybody love me, because if they love me, they could then later withdraw that love. If you don't bring that to consciousness, of course your marriage is going to end in divorce. Because your spouse is just at some point going to say, I can't get in. I've never been able to, I love you with every fiber of my being, but you won't allow me into your real life. Right? You've got to make that unconscious conscious. And that's what I think the journey to enlightenment is all about. It's recognize that we all have that stuff. And you say, well, I was born in the suburbs and I had a happy mom and dad and they're still married after 40 years. And okay, great. But I would bet there are some unresolved issues, some traumas, some things that happen that, I don't know, I remember my mother taking me and my brother to Bambi. And when Bambi's, was it his mom got shot, or I think it was his mom or dad, whichever one it was. Oh my, I was like traumatized. And today there would be a blog about that, and people would be talking about it on Twitter and saying, hey, don't take a 5-year-old to see this movie yet. Wait until they're 9 or something, right? In those days, none of that stuff happened. It was just, it's a Disney movie. It's a family movie. But, and, maybe you were 7 years old and your dog got run over by a car. That's a traumatizing thing. At 7 years old, you're not prepared to mentally process that. When your parents get divorced and you're 9 years old, you're not prepared to mentally process that. When you're 12 years old and you were born and called a boy and you suddenly really believe you're a girl, you're not mentally prepared to process that. Yeah. So we get to, one of the things I say in the book that people laugh about is I say, listen, if you got this far and you're reading this book and you're not in a mental institution, you're not in prison, and you're not, I forget whatever the third one was, you're doing amazing. The fact that you're like a functioning member of society, you've already overcome so many obstacles and hurdles. But that's what this journey of life is about, and for anyone listening, please don't think that this is all life is about, is finding unresolved trauma and we need to go back to relive everything in the childhood. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, like, for me, my first radical rebirths were having to kill off versions of me that I hated. And now my recent radical rebirths are where I'm moving toward a new version of me that I want to manifest, a higher version of me. And you can join anywhere along the process. You do not have to be homeless, drug addict, sleeping under a bridge and hate yourself and want to do a radical rebirth. You maybe Maybe you were much smarter than I was. Maybe you learned much quicker than I did. And maybe you have a pretty good life, but you just realized, yeah, I do have a pretty good life, but I want to have an amazing life. And so I too can choose to have to create a rebirth for myself, even though I'm not a homeless drug addict, even though I'm not an abusive, whatever.
I think that that is absolutely priceless. Just giving the context for people to understand that you don't need to lose everything to start the journey back up. You don't need to hit rock bottom to start the journey, because that's so popular in fiction and in movies. And the person loses everything and then they finally realize that they can be the person they want to be. I think it's very liberating to take the approach that you don't need to do that. We started this with what's a day in Randy Gage's life like. Let's end it with, what's the goal that is stretching you now? Now that you've gone through a radical rebirth and you've written the book, what's the goal that is setting you on fire now, that's in the headlights but far enough ahead that it's stretching you?
A couple things jump to mind when you ask that question. One is this new prosperity ministry. My goal is I want that to do something that I want that to duplicate and scale what I've been doing until this point, which is I will get asked now and then to speak to at-risk youth or high schoolers or college kids, or sometimes I'm speaking to kids in jail.
Mm.
And they listen to me because I was in jail, right? I'm not Mr. Rogers' neighborhood coming in my cardigan sweater, saying whatever he used to, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'm from the hood. I've been in the crack houses of Liberty City and Overtown and National City. I've done drug deals. I've been, I've held up 7-Elevens and Kentucky Fried Chickens. I've burglarized houses, right? So if you tell somebody you have street cred, you got no street cred, right? Either if you have to say it, you don't have it, right? When I walk in and they know my story, so what I'm trying to do, and talk about a hostile audience, right? It's the introduction I get isn't, and he's in the Speaker Hall of Fame, and he's a 14-time New York Times bestseller and author, and they're like, we have a guest speaker today. His name is Mr. Gage. If you so much as look cross-eyed at him, you're going back in your cell, or you're going back in, isolation, So the arms are crossed, the legs are crossed. They're glaring at like, who is this guy? But then I speak my truth and I let them know I've been where you are and there is a way out. And you don't have to be a narco trafficker to be successful. And you don't have to be a rapper to be successful. And if you want to be a rapper, okay, that's cool. Narco trafficker, that's not so cool. But there are ways, and there's a free enterprise system. It's in place, and absolutely the odds are stacked against you, just like the odds were stacked against me. Even though I'm white, those odds were stacked against me. There are certain privileges that are built into the system for people with wealth and affluence and the color of your skin and your ancestry, and I get all that. And I'm telling you the truth, there's still a way out. And so what I'm trying to do with those that I think I can scale with the prosperity ministry is get that message to the teens, to the young adults. That's why I do, it's a love offering basis. I say, because I can only do so many free Facebook posts and podcasts and blog posts and, visit jails and whatever. But if I can really get this prosperity live stream every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern US time, if I can get 50,000 people watching a week, and then I can get 100,000 people watching a week. And I'm holding the vision that at some point I'm going to open my email and there's going to be a message from Netflix or Apple or Hulu, and they're going to say, hey, we've seen your program on YouTube. We'd like to put it on our streaming service because we think 2 million people a week should see that. That's the vision I'm holding for myself. So that's lighting me up. That's my next big goal that's pulling me toward it is, and it's just a test at this point. Basically, I have 1,000. I'm doing a keynote every week for 1,000 to 2,000 people right now. Mm-hmm. And I want to see, and I'm not getting the kind of financial return that I would get just doing that on the free market and charging for it yet, mm-hmm. although it's growing. And I'm not getting 50,000 a week, but I've only done at this point, excuse me, while you and I are talking, I think I've done 6 so far. Right. So, I'll look at it 6 months from now or a year from now, and that's the time to really evaluate it. Mm. But that's my hope, that the universe is ready for that. And then I have 2 other books that are calling me. One is I want to write the definitive end-all book on prosperity. Mm. I want to take one of the most impactful books in my life was The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes. Mm. I would like to write The Science of Prosperity, the equivalent of that book, just on the principles of prosperity. How do you apply them in a real world with TikTok and the Trumpers and the anti-Trumpers and the hate and the division and the clickbait and the low self-esteem people and the corruption in government? How do you stay prosperous in a world like that? How do we persevere through that? And then I actually want to write a science fiction trilogy, a la Matrix or Lord of the Ring or Star Wars kind of thing, but sneak in the principles of prosperity in that writing. Mm. So those are, if you say, okay, what's really, I want to win at least one more World Series with my softball team. Yep. But those are the things that are getting me out of bed at the moment.
I love that. That's there's creativity there. There's giving back to community. Obviously, you've done well for yourself. You've got the money thing out of the way. You're happy. You're teaching principles that excite you, and to have those kind of goals, I think that's a beautiful place to be at. I want to say a huge thank you, Randy. Taking the time out to have a chat about this, talking about the book, about yourself, about your vision, about what it's about, I think is a wonderful insight into the brain that ticks. I've known you now for like 20 years, I think, and you've continually inspired me and motivated me. I tell the story to people that the first time we met, I remember you came in a suit that it looked like a leopard suit or something like that. It was very, very flashy, and I was fanning. Oh, there's Randy Gage. Oh my God, am I ever going to get a chance to speak to him? And I held the vision of us becoming friends and really getting to understand the prosperity principles that you taught. And if anybody's listening and wondering whether or not Randy's worth investing their time to get to know, I don't spend 20 years of my life following somebody just for the fun of it, right?
And just be clear, I wear flashy suits. I definitely don't wear leopard suits. Well, I have this. People think I'm the Tiger King guy.
I don't know why I've got this leopard suit thing in my head. I mean, it was, let's call it a flashy suit. A flashy suit. So the book is Radical Rebirth. It's an absolute, you need to read it. It is a no-brainer. I have read hundreds and hundreds of personal development, self-help books. I have not read a book like this. And I'm not saying that just for the sake of the podcast or the interview. I'm not saying it just because it's you, Randy. I think the book is actually tremendous, incredibly fascinating, great ideas, challenging me to think differently. And I really appreciate what you do in the world. What's the best place people can follow you? Standard question we end with, is the website the best place people are going to go to?
Yeah, randygage.com is kind of Starfleet Command. You can find all my stuff there. There's be a link for the Prosperity live streams every Saturday, link to the podcast, link to my blog, and to engage with me, best place I really connect with people is on Twitter.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you again, Randy. And listeners, wherever you are, make sure you connect with Randy. And you know the drill. Wherever you are, have an awesome morning, evening, or night. And I will catch you on the very next episode. Take care.